This is the first time I've seen Paul ill in my life.
In your life?
Yeah.
I wonder what happened. I think he's probably sick of me. Is
Probably.
that what happened?
Yeah, no,
so,
probably.
US debt ceiling has been raised 74 times since 1962, 10 times since 2001, and clearly $14.3 trillion is not enough. It needs to be raised once again.
Yes, but over the same time period, do you have how big their economy has grown? No.
But
how big is their economy?
So $14 trillion in debt is not a worrisome figure in
It
your
is
mind.
a worrisome figure.
Okay.
But it's not insurmountable. I actually had a look at a debt graph since World War II.
Yes.
Now remember, this period we can compare to World War II. And wasn't it the worst period in US history since the 1930s? So I didn't see that sort of period where the Fed were too late to react. And what happened thereafter?
Okay.
People lining outside soup kitchens. You remember that? So which one would you rather have? The Fed increasing their balance sheet and bailing out and with all these programs?
As long as it's
which one would you?
As long as it's sustainable.
It's not sustainable. What I'm saying is this is extraordinary measures taken in extraordinary times. Now, I had a look at that graph, and all through the 70s and 80s, you know what? The US was not in surplus, was in deficit. First time they recorded a surplus since the Vietnam War was in the mid-90s.
And when we did see super high inflation in the US was in fact late 70s, early 80s, and then the Fed came in and hiked rates. And they also subsequently changed the way the model was viewed with regards to measuring inflation.
And inflation was what back then? In the mid-teens?
In the mid-teens, I know, but they measured inflation differently. And now that we measure inflation and we extrapolate the food and the fuel components, we have hence core inflation sitting at 0.1%. So literally inexistent inflation.
Yes, but you heard Pluses say quite explicitly that they watched the core inflation measure closely in the short term, and they watched the headline number in the long term.
Yeah.
So you might well say to yourself, oh, well, you know, getting anxious. I'm not getting anxious. These are the smartest economic minds at work anywhere in the world watching this on our behalf.
So speaking of angst, Google coming under pressure, disappointing quarterly results. Earnings did beat expectations, but the search engine's costs surged 54%.
But they said they were hiring, and they said they were going to increase every salaried employees by 10%. So they hired a lot more people, and they increased all their salaries. In fact, at Google, don't they give you time off to go and explore how you can change the world? You know, things like they'll drive a driverless car through the state of California, and people only notice 6 weeks later. This is the sort of stuff they're doing. So this is a company, I think, that will change the world.
So in other words, when you see costs surging by 54%, you feel comfortable in saying that they are obviously gearing themselves up for far better growth.
Bigger, exactly. And this is a once-off. And, you know, they got, take a couple of steps back, because there are other companies inside of a US context who've been cutting jobs. But we're in a different sort of a cycle now. And in fact, the same said Federal Reserve member Pluses also said that the last 2 months of job creation was encouraging for him. So I don't know where all this bearishness is coming from. I think it's people just stuck over the last 18 months, and maybe in 18 months' time they'll come out of the woods.
You've been saying that for 18 months, though.
And the equity markets, where are they? Just remind me, yes, they bottomed in March 2009 at 666 on the S&P.
So tell me where we are on the Dow relative to 10 years ago.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter. Where are we on the Dow relative to 20 years ago? Where are we on the S&P relative to 20 years ago?
The point is, I mean, you know, over a 10-year period, and the fact that we've got
nobody even invests longer than 1 year nowadays. You know, they're all stuck on a 12-month price target. You know, where did all the long-term investors? Is Warren Buffett just some quirky old guy who's got too long time frames? I don't know, Eleni. We're long-term investors. When I say to people, we've been buying BHP Billiton since 2004. They look at me as if I've got screws loose in my head or something like that.
And you obviously accumulated during the downtime as well, when we saw
were buying all the way
BHP
through.
And Anglo didn't
sell a share in anger, because the long-term fundamentals for a company like BHP Billiton. I mean, how many more people does China still have to urbanize? The urbanization rate over the next 20, 15 years is enormous globally.
So let's bring it back home. BRICS,
yes.
We've spoken about it all week. It has been one of the biggest topics for us. With regards to credit lines, we're looking at alternative ways to work together with Brazil, with India, with China, and with Russia. with regards to possible investment opportunities going forward and benefits for South Africa. And a question that I've also posed to many of the people I've chatted to this week, does it excite you? Do you think it's an exciting time?
Look, the actual BRICS membership, the guy who coined the phrase, Jim O'Neill, he says, no, we don't fit the criteria in terms of population, middle class, growth rates, all those sorts of things. So, that aside, in an African context, Nigeria is probably a better member of the BRICS club, or the BRIC club, but, S rhymes so much better with BRICS. That my colleague in the office, Byron, said we should actually change it to cribs. But on balance, I think these are nice relationships to have, because even if we don't have the population, we're by no means a small economy. And we're the most advanced economy on the continent. And if China and India are going to need massive resources for these infrastructural plans, then obviously we're pretty much key to all of this. So I like that from a relationship point of view. I don't like the fact that we don't fit the Jim O'Neill club.
Okay, last words. What have you got for us for next week?
Well, I'm actually away. Unlike Wayne, I'm away the whole week. So I've got nothing but plain Karoo. So maybe I'll check out the fracking thing and see what it's all about. Yeah, exactly. And maybe have a look at the telescope thing too. So suss those two things out.